part 2 of our Lighting the Candle, A World That Works conversation today. In the first one, we spent quite a bit of time diving into possibility and came up with 3 E's a couple of times. But to kick this off, we're really interested in empowerment, encouragement, engagement, and there's probably a half dozen more E's along there. But for right now, that may give us the grist that we need to get started with our conversation. I'm Bill Corral, and with me today are my 2 generous friends, Vanessa Lewis and Ken Caputo. And the long and the short of where we are is this is a tech talk on being human, because we decided last week that we kind of suck at being human. But we don't mean that in a derogatory, no possibility way. We mean that as good as we think we are, or as bad as we think we are, we have the power to change it. We have the power to grow and transform. And so now we're discussing how language and conversation and engagement with other human beings using those tools brings empowerment for us all and lights the candle. So, Vanessa, would you like to lead us off with some thoughts?
Yeah, hey, so I just want to say first of all, about that awesome quote. That was Ken who made that quote for us. And I had, what did you say? You said, we're humans and sometimes we suck at it. And no, it's not meant derogatory at all, but I shared it on one of my social media accounts, and I think I got I didn't get any angry faces or anything, but I got one like. So,
oh, yeah.
Not that I'm counting the likes, not at all, but you use that as kind of a measuring stick sometimes. And I'm just thinking, well, yeah, we do. It's 100% true what he said. And so that's why we just keep bringing up the quote, and we 100% agree, right, team?
Yeah.
So, and it always helps to have a little humor about ourselves. But the truth is we do. We suck at it, and we're not supposed to be able to be great at it, We're not supposed to be perfect. We can strive for excellence. We're not really supposed to be perfect. There's only one perfect in this universe. And we're actually not even 100% entirely supposed to figure out on our own, because, we try and we will fail, and we're destined to fail, and that's just the way it is. But but we can certainly strive for excellence, and we can certainly strive for other, to maybe have a spirituality, to find things that help us to find who we are along the way, as well as where we belong. And so, on this podcast, you mentioned the 3 E's in the last segment, and so we were going to kick off with that. And I love those, Billy. You said empowerment, encouragement, and engagement. And I love the alliteration that they all start with E, but they all speak very, very different things. No, I take that back. Actually, they can all link together, and I think that was part of your thought there too. So empowerment, I'm going to skip over that for a minute, but encouragement and engagement. Encouragement is needed. It's. I'm gonna say that we probably don't feel like it's as powerful. Empowerment is more powerful. If we can encourage someone just by, asking the questions that we do on this podcast, I think we're in a good place. And if anything, it's like, when, you're in a, for lack of a better example, you're in a college class, or you're in a meeting and someone raises their hand. These days it would be virtually usually, right? But someone raises their hand and, asks the question in the chat, and someone else gets to see, and it's like, oh, I was thinking that same question. I'm glad I didn't have to ask it, or whatever the case. So I kind of think of our podcast, some of the conversations, some of the questions that come up might be like that. So we're encouraging each other by even just coming together and just being, 3 or 4 or 5 different people from all different walks of life, and just asking questions that other people do have, and maybe they're questions that we either don't know to ask, they've never occurred to us, or they are the questions we don't know of anyone that we feel we can have this particular conversation with.
Yes.
And so that's what I'll say for that. And then engagement. Oh man, engagement is one of the best ways, I think, for us to learn, right? Engagement encompasses a lot of things too, because if we can encourage someone by engaging them, simply by, allowing them to feel comfortable asking the question they have, as one example, or allowing them to cite the answer that they want to offer. And I have an example, but I'm gonna skip over that now, and I'm gonna just pass the torch now to either of you, and maybe I'll come back to it.
Awesome and thoughtful, just as usual. And the one thought that I had while you were speaking is, if your attention is on the outcome before you speak, you might want to try something else. So for example, when someone says in the chat a question, they have an equal opportunity to either feel good or feel like they asked a foolish question. And the only foolish question, if you're in a teaching environment, is the one that does not get asked. Because I think, as you mentioned, there were other people that would be experiencing the same sort of question or doubt, or maybe a response to something that gets said. So we need to teach people to have a lot wider road to operate on in terms of making mistakes and adjusting, so that they don't go off the road and stay wherever they went off. When people stop growing, that's a wasted life. When they stop questioning and they stop looking at what's possible, or how they might do things differently, or how they might engage people and pull an answer out of somebody else, Mm-hmm. When we learn that it's not only risky, but it's also safe if we count on ourselves not to go away after something that gets said that we don't like. When we stop talking, that's when bad things usually happen. Right? Anybody heard the, have you heard this?
Misunderstanding.
Well, exactly.
One of the ways.
The cure for bad speech is more speech. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I have. And, I don't mean to contradict what I just said, but I'm not sure I agree with that 100%.
Well, say some more, please.
I see what you're doing. Okay, no, I'm gonna pass the torch now. But I'm just thinking. Well, no, let me just explain this for a minute. So no, because I want to understand this now. The cure for bad speech is more speech. Okay, so I guess if it's the case of, well, now whoever made the bad speech gets a chance to explain themselves, right? Or whoever agreed with that bad speech, same thing, gets the chance to say it a little differently, but still, again, get their point across. But for some reason, and so I can agree with that. Logically, of course, that makes sense in all the rules of communication. But I feel like if someone says a bad speech, I feel like that's a foolish thing, and that person, might just be a fool. And so why would they have the chance? Why would they have the opportunity to spread their foolery, or to have have someone else continue that. Like tabloids, we know that that's just silliness, and most of us know that you can't believe everything that's said, or The Onion, that website that has a lot of farce, and we understand it, and it's like a more educated type of humor, right? It's like a sarcasm is used, and you have to know the truth in order to be able to discern a falsity. So I guess my main point is that, and I would love to hear your follow-up arguments to this if you have any. I would love that. But my main point is that if there's bad speech, then if it's bad speech that goes up against truth, then it should not be replicated. It should be snuffed out.
So how about cure for bad speech is mindful speech?
Good luck with that. So in what I'm hearing both of you say, who's going to be the judge, jury, and an executioner of the quality of the speech? It's always going to be the listener. So if the listener if there's something that's not communicating, or if there's, when you agree with somebody, 95 out of 100 times, you're hearing something different than what they're saying that you already agree with. Let me just try that on you one more time. Like, I know that's true. I agree with it. As opposed to, what is it you actually said? We hear words that approximate. We hear words that we do this mindful translation of this to that, and then we act like we heard what they said, and we not only hear it, but we agree with it, and we would now fight for it. Only to find out that said, no, I'm going to Dunkin' Donuts is all I said, So the point is that how can you know prior to something being said, whether it's good speech or it's bad speech? By bad speech, I mean failed speech, where it didn't communicate, it didn't land, and the desired effect or the communication was not received. So the cure for that is not to stop talking and walk away from each other and make a decision that so-and-so is a certain way because of what you heard them say. I see a lot of that going on right now in families, in communities, on social media, where people know how somebody is going to, what their motivations are, what they think like before they say anything. Have you noticed any of that going on?
There's a reason I said what I said.
Yeah. So that's called dysfunctional conversation. What's dysfunctional about it? People are making points to either be admired, for their willingness to go far with it, or to upset whoever the listener is, or to create, some camaraderie with like thinking people against somebody else. Now, I don't see that as being functional. And we come back to what Ken said. The cure for bad speech is mindful speech.
Mindful speech. Yeah.
So please say some more about that.
Well, so I'm curious. I mean, like you were talking about the judge and jury. I think that's the result that's produced, and how do you view that result? So, for example, if maybe there was good communication, if you recognize that someone's values really don't align with yours and you choose not to have a relationship with them. So, and obviously when you start making those judgments in advance, like you're saying, that's an issue. But I'd be curious how many people possibly learn something about someone else that changed their view of them, and it was the catalyst was all of the chaos that has been the last year or whatever. But it led to actually a deeper understanding that also led to a change in the way that you view that relationship, you know, even with someone that maybe you've known for years. I don't know. It's just something worth considering. And I think going back to empowerment, engagement, and encouragement, as I was thinking about that, I was thinking about it from a leadership perspective. So when, instead of for yourself, when you are in a position to feed or nurture those things in someone else, you know,
Yeah.
whether it's, you know, you're a leader in some way, whether it's leader of your family or a company or whatever. And, you know, the thing that struck me about that, and we do this like engagement, one of the things that we do is we encourage an attention audit. And it's basically how much of your attention goes where, and when you're doing something, how much of your attention is actually present. So, you know, so I mean, a simple thing would be the Zoom meetings, and everybody's, you know, on their cell phone, you know, or on Facebook or something, instead of actually present in the Zoom meeting. How much of their attention is on the meeting? How much of their attention is elsewhere? You know, that kind of thing. So as a leader, it's helping people recognize the level of their attention that's being brought to what is currently in front of them, you know, as a starting point for nurturing that and making it better. So it can be a quick thing to see someone has this political leaning or whatever, and then with very little attention, you can just pass judgment on them based on that, instead of going deeper and asking questions and find out, you know, what lies behind that, all that kind of stuff. So I think that, you know, that's where a lot of the tension we're seeing now could potentially be coming from. As far as empowerment, from a leadership perspective, are you empowering the light or the shadow? You know, so someone who's, for example, we talk about, we have these different lenses that we operate through, and one of them is, we call it gap filler. And it's someone who looks at a system and they see the things that are broken or could potentially break. So, but the problem is they can also be overly critical and complaining a lot about what's not working. So what we want to empower is their ability to see things and then use that as a platform to solve problems that make the system work better. And we don't want to feed the flip side of that we call the shadow side, which would be just complaining about it without offering anything actionable to make it better. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
Yeah. And then as far as encouragement, that's the feeding part. You know, what are you encouraging? Are you encouraging the expression that leads to bigger and better outcomes for everyone? Or are you encouraging the part that might, like, you know, we'll see that same systems person, if they start blaming other people on their team or deflecting blame away from themselves or justifying it through someone else's action, we don't encourage that or feed that. We try to steer it back to a more productive, solution-oriented conversation. And that's what we encourage them to do. That's what they get rewarded for. So if you're in a social media channel and what's being encouraged is the debate and the argument, and that's what gets the engagement, you're going to get more of it by nature of it. If you, on the other hand, encourage a healthy, solution-oriented, recognizing each other's differences, understanding them, and then moving towards like a common win-win situation, whatever it is, then you're going to get more of that, you know? So
just a quick response to you. There is a very powerful distinction in terms of, let's say the construct is two different legs of communication. Mm-hmm. There's talking about, and then there's speaking for, okay? The talking about, picture yourself at a stadium. The people that are in the stands are going to be talking about the referees and their calls. They're going to talk about the missed play. They're going to talk about all of this sort of thing. The people on the court, the people on the field are talking about the action that's going on right now and how to forward it and to make it more positive and to work together to create an outcome. So you get the talking about, the complaining, the nattering, and all that kind of stuff. And then the speaking for is we're concentrating here, we're working, and we're engaged in creation. Two completely different legs. What has happened in social media is it's 99 and 44 100% talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the coin of the realm is to be able to make either a funny comment, something that's outrageous, something that is, typically empowering, but you can go anywhere on the platform and find it. What's missing is people who are saying, please be good to each other as I'm being good to you.
I think there's people saying that. It's I don't think it's being fed as much. I know I do a lot of positive Facebook engagement posts, and they certainly don't get anywhere near the attention or engagement that, all of the other crazy stuff that I'm not putting that. That's not what I want, to use social media for. But I think it's not that it's not there. It's just doesn't get fed as much by people who are using that media, It's my thought anyway. Sorry, Vanessa, didn't mean to interject over you.
No, that's fine. So no, but just going along with what you were saying, Ken, and tagging along what you had said, Bill, I think the problem there is engagement. I think we actually don't, social media was created to engage initially.
Yes.
Right? For all sorts of purposes, for marketing, down the line it became marketing, but it was originally created as a community sort of engagement, and I think we've lost that. Maybe that's because like you were saying, Ken. Well, first of all, I will say, I've been in marketing for a time, and I will say that when you think, it's just the law of the way publishing works. When you think that something is going to go over really, really well, it usually doesn't, and you're like, what happened? It goes over like a lead balloon. And when you think, and then usually when you think, oh boy, I'm, like I know you post a lot of your blogs, and sometimes you may feel like, oh, I'm really vulnerable at what I've just shared here. These are my inner thoughts. These are my, I'm sharing this with the world. I'm putting it out there. Yikes, I hit send, and that's very scary. And then you find all these people, like it and comment, and all this engagement comes in. And so that's one point there is where it almost seems like we're all, I'm going to make a bold statement here, but I think we're all, we're really searching for what's real. We kind of lost touch with what's really real anymore. We have that, the wonderful fake news that came about a couple of years ago, and that's, in the political landscape, which is probably, transmitted down to everything else. That means not true, or that statistic's not true, or go check it out on Snopes, and so I think that I don't want to go too off on a tangent here, but regarding that, if we can, I think that the real way to, like even on this podcast, the real way to engage with people is to what you said in the last podcast, Ken. I'll just go back to that with the seven questions, the 7 whys that you ask people to ask themselves. I know it wasn't something that you came up with, but I think it's a brilliant strategy. And you said that by the time people get to the 7th, they're in tears, and so you reach that part of them, that vulnerable part. And so I think that the only way we'll really truly get engagement, and this is your 3rd E, so empowerment, encouragement, and engagement, is let's forget about trying to empower people or even encourage them, because going along with what I was saying about when we post something and we think it's going to go over great and everyone's going to love this and everyone's going to, rah behind me, or at least I'll get a few likes out of it, or whatever the case, or maybe some shares, goes over like a lead balloon. If we're anticipating what people need, what we think they or maybe so what they think they want, and we get that wrong. And we're thinking that this is going to encourage someone or empower someone, and we get that wrong. And now we've sort of lost we're feeling discouraged ourselves. But if we can maybe just share a little bit more about even just what's really us, that vulnerability, I think that would then engage. I hope that's made some sense. I know I kind of went off, I was thinking as I was talking, which is always a dangerous thing for me, but I hope that made some sense, or if anyone wants to clarify.
Yeah. So the whole idea of doing something and then being discouraged is exactly what we're talking about. The world has to have people willing to be discouraged for a moment and then have a solution for that discouragement to replace it and transform it to encouragement. Right? Disempowerment is not a way of being. Disempowerment is a choice. It's a choice. You either are going to sit where you are or you're going to phone a friend. If you phone a friend, you phone the right one, it's impossible for you to be discouraged or disempowered for more than a few moments. Guess what? It's all made up, whatever it is. Every last bit of it that's conversational. I mean, if your car gets hit by a tree that falls over, that's not made up. However, anything that occurs in a conversation that doesn't work and doesn't give you a desired outcome, I say, and I'll say it the way that Ken did, the cure for that failure is maybe something that's a little more thoughtful. Maybe something where it's concerned in terms of taking a statement and turning it into a question, so that communication can occur, so that a meeting of the minds, and so that something can be distinguished between people in a group. Sometimes it's one-on-one, sometimes it's a group of 3 or 4. Sometimes it's a classroom full of 35 or 40 people or more. But the whole idea here is every human being that feels like it's over, all these people are like this, and all these people are like that, I want to just say, forget about it. Replace all of that with I love you and see what happens. Pure agape, pure without reason, nothing to do, no need to earn it, just love you.
It's a good place to start.
It might get you shot in certain quarters, but it's worth the risk.
But what's interesting is there's work to move. That's like to get to the core. Sometimes there's layers that there's trauma. There's certain views that that are almost like hardened shells that are between us and those deeper whys. And I think that it's funny, the way people would cry when they get to that 7th why, I think was just like all of a sudden they connected to their heart, and it was like finding this long lost friend. And also I think that there was probably some form of healing or transformation on the way down there, where they had to, we talk a lot, like week 2 of this course I do is called The Mirror. And we warn everybody, this is a really hard week because we look in the mirror, but we don't really see what we're looking at very often because we're just, so all of a sudden you're really looking and I know when I do it, which is regularly, it's like, holy crap, it's not fun. It can be hard. And, and sometimes you just don't even want to face it. So, so it's just comes back to, always feels like there's this work, that goes along with it. And there were 2 things that struck me that were shared with me. One was that guru, everybody hears that term guru. One definition of it is dispeller of darkness. So the guru doesn't know anything or do anything. They help you pull back the illusions and the veils and the darkness so that you can just see more clearly. But they're also not telling you what to do with it. So, once you can see, now you have some choices to make, and sometimes that can be hard. It's easier to just stay in the dark and not know, is how it can feel. And the other thing that, a course that I'm taking right now, talking about the different ways that the Western, cultural approach versus Eastern. And he talks about, in Western world, the statement is the universe is knowable. And a lot of the Eastern traditions, it's the universe is observable. And that's an interesting thing too. Like, trying to know something, there's a effort that could be very frustrating, whereas observing it, interpreting it, and trying to understand it, that takes some of that pressure off, is the way it felt to me anyway. So maybe that's the other thing in our communication with all of this tension. Instead of knowing the answer, or knowing what's right, or knowing what that other person is actually saying, if we observed it and just looked to understand it without right away trying to influence or judge or any of that stuff, maybe that would be helpful to people. So that's what came to mind anyway.
That strikes me as a really great opening conversation for a future podcast, by the way.
There you go. Cliffhanger ending.
A few minutes long here, but I think this is valuable, and I think all the folks that are going to be watching this will appreciate that we stayed with this for a few more minutes. However, next week, you ain't seen nothing yet. Am I right?
That's right.
So with that said, would you each like to say your goodbyes? And if there's anything that you'd like to say in particular, then just take a moment to do so.
Okay, I will go. Goodbye. No, I think just, I think one thing that's come up a lot, had a lot of conversations over the last week with various people, and, give yourself permission to have emotional reactions, and then also take a little bit of time to breathe, like really breathe, like diaphragmatic breathing, and just go still, take a few breaths, let the tide, it's all cycles. So just let it peak, and don't beat yourself up too bad about it. This has been a tough time for everybody in very different ways for very different reasons, but I think in the end it's hit everybody pretty hard. So
agreed. Thank you, Ken. Vanessa?
Yeah, thank you. So I agree with everything you said, Ken, and yeah, I like what you said, Bill, about just having it be about love. If we can just look at each other, with love and no judgment, and maybe try to understand. But if that infuriates our emotion, ignites our emotions, or further misunderstandings, we just have to step back and just leave it to love. And I have a quote that I wanted to share. But we know how to love because we were loved first, in a very deep and sacrificial way. And I love this quote here. This is by Waldo Emerson. He said, "Most of the shadows of this life are caused by standing in one's own sunshine." So I just want to leave you all with that. Thank you. See you on the flip side. See you next week.
That's awesome. I'm going to repeat what you said. Most of the shadows in this life are caused by standing in one's own sunshine.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.